Standing in front of the Russian State Duma, the leader of Russia's Communist Party just delivered an unprecedented warning. Revolution is coming. There are echoes of 1917 inside Russia right now as something big is breaking in the country. This is what Putin feared most. People are turning against him. The Tsars of yesteryear are coming to haunt him, and all that Putin can do is try to swim against the rising tide that threatens to sweep him away. The revolution is coming. That's what Gennady Zyuganov, who is the veteran leader of Russia's Communist Party, warned during the plenary session of the State Duma, which is Russia's lower house of parliament. His words come ahead of elections in September, and they are barbed in their criticism even as Zyuganov cleverly negotiates his way through the pitfalls of modern Russian politics. We're doing everything we can to support Putin and his strategy and policies, but you, the government, are not listening, Zyuganov declared in words that seem far more supportive of Putin than they actually are. Putin is the government. His cronies are the ones who are failing. Cleverly, Zyuganov lays blame at Putin's feet while falsely acting as though none of this is Putin's fault. It is, and Zyuganov made that clear with more criticisms of the government, as he warned that a revolution is afoot. If you, the government, do not urgently adopt financial, economic and other measures, by autumn a repeat of what happened in 1917 awaits us. We don't have the right to repeat that. Let's take some decisions, Zyuganov blared. This is a call to arms. Zyuganov isn't part of Putin's United Russia party. He is part of the opposition. Even as he tones down his words to avoid Putin's wrath, what Zyuganov is saying here is simple. Putin's war-driven policies aren't working. Change is needed and revolution is coming. The echoes of 1917 will really worry Putin. He is a man who loves to reference history even as he warps the events of the past. But even he can't deny what happened in 1917 is something that he never wants to see repeated. 1917 was the year of the Russian Revolution. Two of them, in fact. The first of which overthrew Russia's imperial government, with the second placing the Bolsheviks in power. Those revolutions were carried out against the backdrop of Russia losing huge numbers of its people in World War I, which had caused economic strife throughout the country, leading many in Russia to question why it had even gotten involved in the first place. Massive casualties at the front, spreading economic hardship, incompetent leadership, and a sense of hatred toward a financial and political elite all combined to create a storm that changed Russia forever. We're simplifying here, but it all sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Zyuganov sees the parallels, and he was quick to draw on them during an April 15th speech to the State Duma, where he made the case that Russia's societal structure, as it stands right now, is wrong for the country. We are sliding into a complete dead end with our oligarchic capitalism. They don't want to invest in our victory, in our children, in large families, and so on. Another 600,000 people died out last year. We are sliding into a dead end from a socio-economic point of view. This interest rate, this policy, this financing, Zyuganov declared in his speech. Again, no direct criticism of Putin. But this is Putin's society that is being laid bare under Zyuganov's microscope. The oligarchs, the corruption, the twisted version of capitalism that Putin has spent a quarter of a century bending to his will, is leading to the sort of economic collapse and extreme war losses that Russia saw in 1917. The New Age Tsar is blind to the needs of his people, hidden away in his ivory bunker, collecting his billions as his country burns. Anybody who is really paying attention will know that Zyuganov is attempting to incite. In fact, something that had happened just a few weeks before he delivered his incendiary speech outlined what he aimed to achieve with his talk of revolution. We'll come back to that soon. First, there's no denying that the Communist Party leader's rhetoric about the Russian economy has plenty of substance. Zyuganov calls for more support for President Putin are really a veiled criticism of the situation that Putin and his invasion of Ukraine have created in Russia. The man who promises stability to the Russian people has delivered nothing but chaos for over 4 years. After wartime growth in 2023 and 24, the latter of which saw Russia enjoy 4.3% gross domestic product or GDP growth, Russia's economy started its slump in 2025. GDP growth was only 1%, well below projections. A drop to 0.8% was anticipated in 2026 before the oil windfall, which is an indirect result of Operation Epic Fury in Iran, led to the International Monetary Fund raising its projections to 1.1%. That still isn't good. There are a lot more cracks beneath the surface, along with plenty of signs above the surface that Russia's economy is failing to the level that Zyuganov suggests. And then there is the death. Another 600,000 people died out last year, Zyuganov revealed. Many of those dead will be in Ukraine, sacrificed for a war that Ukraine says has cost Russia over 1.325 million in dead and wounded over the last 4 years. Again, the parallels. Economic problems, massive casualties due to a war that is beyond anything that anyone inside Russia anticipated. This is 1917 all over again, and there seems to be nothing that Putin can do to fix it. This is the dead end that Putin has sent Russia down. Zyuganov believes that he knows what's coming, and we only need to look at a speech that he delivered days before his explosive remarks in Russia's State Duma to see that. On April 10th, Zyuganov made a more direct appeal to Russia's voters, who would have to serve as the groundswell for the revolution that he believes is coming. This time, he caught everyone off guard with comments about the state of Russian society that Putin has created. If the authorities do not give voters the opportunity to correct the situation with their ballot in September, they will doom the country to defeat, Zyuganov said as he addressed Russia's people and the country's authorities. But the reality, he claims, is that Russia now faces two choices: capitalism with war or socialism with justice. The political aspects of these comments aside, Zyuganov is very clearly telling the Russian people that Russia under Putin isn't working. A return to communism may not be the answer. Zyuganov wants that for obvious reasons, but if a change, any kind of change, doesn't come, then Russia is doomed to defeat in Ukraine and collapse at home. And to add an extra little bit of spice to all of Zyuganov's warnings, the communist leader has also said that Russia is putting itself into the perfect position to become the next target for the US. Back in March, Zyuganov pointed to America's ousting of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela and its current actions in Iran as warning signs for Russia. We will be next. Look at Trump's strategy. China is first, we are second, Iran is third, Zyuganov said during a session of the lower house of the State Duma, adding, "We'll be torn apart worse than Yugoslavia, Iraq, and Libya combined. Russia is the planet's main storehouse, and that's precisely why it's a prime target. That storehouse has been weakened. Putin is the reason why. Now is as good a time as any for the US to come calling, and if it does, the revolution will have come too late, as broken Russia won't be able to do anything to defend itself, as its economy is in shambles and its people are dying in record numbers. Either way, the outcome is unthinkable: the collapse of Putin and everything that he has built." But it's not just warnings being blared from the leader of an opposition party that reveal the signs of a revolution that may be afoot. Putin himself is exposing his weakness. He's angry and shifting blame for an economic catastrophe that he caused. But before we go deeper into that, this is a quick reminder that you are watching The Military Show. We bring you the full picture behind the headlines, so make sure that you're subscribed if you want to stay ahead of the curve. Now, Zyuganov's words could be taken as the rantings of a man who has a vested interest in seeing Putin lose power. He is an opposition party leader after all, but their timing is far from coincidental. Zyuganov took his opportunity to pounce because Putin himself is showcasing a level of weakness that we haven't seen at any other point during his 4+ year invasion of Ukraine. On April 15th, which is the same date that Zyuganov told Russia's authorities to fight fair, Putin was busy scolding Russia's top economic officials. The economic contraction being seen in the country was unacceptable, Putin declared, and something needed to be done. Nobody in the room would have had the guts to tell Putin that nothing could be done. Everything that is setting the stage for the revolution is a direct result of Putin's warmongering. It's Putin's fault that Russia has been engulfed by a war that the European Union External Action claims is costing the country €250 billion, or about $293 billion, annually. That's well over $1 trillion thrown away on a fight that Russia is nowhere close to winning. Putin's scolding of his officials doesn't mean much. Russia's central bank has already dropped interest rates to 14.5%, which is part of a concerted campaign to stimulate growth through borrowing. 14.5% is still an eye-watering number, though, and the constant decreases in Russia's base interest rate, which was 21% as recently as May 2025, are creating concerns that more spikes in inflation are coming. Putin's delusion, purposeful or not, about his role in Russia's economic decline was also revealed in December 2025. Back then, Putin called the slowdown in Russia's economy a price paid for maintaining the quality of the economy and macroeconomic indicators. What does that even mean? What quality of the economy? This is a country that is dealing with hiring freezes, massive external debt, a complete lack of monetary reserves, and a pathway to recovery that has narrowed so much that it barely even exists anymore. And Putin's reaction is to scold officials who can't tell Russia's leader that they're in the position they're in because Putin put them there. A head is being buried in the sand. If Zyuganov is right, that head is going to be chopped off by a revolution that is waiting just around the corner. The real problem for Putin is this. He may genuinely believe that the short-term relief that Russia is enjoying as a result of Operation Epic Fury and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz may be enough to solve Russia's economic problems. That's a view that will only lead Putin further down the path of being the main subject of a revolutionary tale that goes down in Russian history alongside the rebellions of 1917. It is indeed true that Russia's economy is going to get a slight boost from rising oil prices that have resulted from the war in Iran. We don't know exactly how much Russia is benefiting from the increase in oil prices. The country uses a complicated oil tax formula that has a 1-month lag, so the official data for March hasn't been released by the Kremlin yet. But we have some indicators. The Financial Times reported that Russia was raking in an extra $150 million per day in oil money back in March. The Washington Institute adds, the outcomes of the Iran war have allowed for Russian oil to be sold at around or above the $59 per barrel target that the Kremlin set in its 2026 budget. Before, Russian oil was trading at about $40 per barrel as a result of Western sanctions. Putin may see all of this as a lifeline that gives him more time to desperately scramble for a fix to the economy that Zyuganov says lies at the heart of the upcoming revolution. But really, the oil windfall is just papering over the cracks. It's not even as much of a windfall as it appears to be. Ukraine has taken the wrecking of Russia's oil exports into its own hands to ensure that Putin can't benefit as much as he would like from the crisis in the Middle East. According to Al Jazeera, Ukraine's hammering of Russian oil exports in March and April has led to a massive slump in Russia's oil exports that counteract the rise in oil prices. In March, Russia's sales of crude oil declined by 300,000 barrels per day, with sales of refined oil products dropping by 200,000 barrels. So even the paper has become unstuck. And that gives us a chance to peek through the cracks in the Russian wall to see what is festering below the surface that will lead to the revolution. The structural difficulties that exist at the heart of the Russian economy are being exposed, and one sign that we can look to comes from the country's businesses. On April 21st, the Moscow Times reported that Russian companies are freezing hiring as a demand for their service declines. That's according to Russia's central bank, which says that 64% of the companies that it surveyed say they don't plan to change their staff numbers in 2026. Mass recruitment has fallen off, and layoffs are looming for 14% of Russian companies. Some good news for the average Russian is that salaries are going to increase by 10 to 15% by the end of the year. Still, think about what this means. Hiring freezes mean fewer jobs available, which will inevitably lead to the Kremlin trying to funnel more people into the military. Rising salaries don't mean much to the unemployed or the laid off, resulting in a groundswell of anger among everyday Russians at the situation that their country's collapsing economy, which is all the result of Putin's war, has put them in. Again, we see echoes of 1917. Live in poverty or go die in a war. Neither is a great option for Russia's people, and further up the economic chain, alarm bells are ringing that tell us that Russia is on the verge of a revolution-causing financial collapse. In mid-April, which again was around the same time that Zyuganov delivered his fiery speech, Fortune reported that Russia's Economy Development Minister Maxim Reshetnikov is pointing at Russia's reserves and screaming at Putin to pay attention. Speaking at a business conference earlier in April, Reshetnikov noted that Russia has been able to deal with labor shortages and rising salaries because it had vast reserves it could use to prop up its businesses. Our current records show that these reserves have largely been used up. This truly is the situation, and the macroeconomic situation is substantially more difficult, Reshetnikov bluntly told the conference attendees. The pot has run dry after years of war spending, so there will be no more bailouts or relief for Russian companies. They're on their own. That's why we're seeing hiring freezes, and it's only going to get worse as the fall-off in reserves means that Putin starts looking elsewhere for cash to keep his invasion going. More taxes, pulling yet more cash out of the social services. Russia's people will watch as their society is weakened to fund a fight that is killing off hundreds of thousands of their people every year. Add another ingredient to the revolution pot. Russia's debt situation is no better. Back in February, Russia's external debt reached almost $62 billion per data published by the country's Ministry of Finance. This is a 20-year high. The last time that Russia's external debt exceeded $60 billion was way back in January 2006. Combine state and private external debt and the numbers get even worse. Russia's central bank cites a 10.4% increase in 2025, creating a total of $319.8 billion in debt. Putin has put a brave face on this. Russia's state debt of 17.7% of GDP is one of the world's lowest, he claims. But again, paper cracks. Debt is rising as reserves dry up and Russian businesses refuse to offer new jobs. It all adds up to the discontent that led Zyuganov to reference 1917. As for Putin, he can't hide away from the discontent for much longer. His approval rating is plummeting. On April 24th, Sky News reported that a poll conducted by the Russian Public Opinion Research Center has revealed that Putin's approval ratings have dropped for the 7th consecutive week. The ratings stood at 73.3% at the beginning of March. Now they're in freefall. 65.6% is the most recent rating, and the odds are that the percentage will fall lower. Even more devastatingly for Putin, these are his lowest approval ratings that have been recorded since the beginning of the Ukraine invasion. And there's another wrinkle to these numbers. Just how truthful do you feel the average Russian is going to be about their authoritarian leader, who has a habit of cracking down on anybody who speaks out about him? The fact that the ratings are down to 65.6% is an indicator that more people are getting brave enough to tell Putin how they feel after 4 years of war. But how many more say they approve without really meaning it? The 4-year low point that has been recorded is bad enough. It shows that whatever patriotic fervor Putin tapped into when he launched his invasion has dried up. However, the real story behind these numbers is that approval is likely much lower. It's just that many Russians are afraid to say how they really feel. So we return to Zyuganov's comments, and we see that all of the ingredients in the recipe of a 1917-style revolution are falling into place. A seemingly endless war that is causing death on a massive scale. Economic issues are going from bad to worse with no sign of recovery. Approval ratings are dropping even as Putin tries to crack down on every single source of disapproval. Something is building inside Russia. Zyuganov knows it. Many of the Russian people know it. And as much as he tries to hide away from reality, Putin knows it. There is only so much blame shifting that Putin can pull off before his chickens come home to roost. How much longer does Putin have now that even prominent political figures are telling him that the society that he created is failing? The oil band-aid that is helping Putin to stave off the inevitable isn't going to save him for much longer either. Ukraine's interceptor drones are already flying in the Gulf states. Now Ukraine is doing something massive to unlock the Strait of Hormuz and drive oil prices right back down. Find out what by checking out our video, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to The Military Show so you never miss our latest analysis of Putin's crumbling power base. And thank you for watching.